when we're talking about, you're like, what idea? And I'm like, well, because my brain immediately went to, well, in chapter one, and I don't think that that was appropriate. And so, I was trying to think of something that's always on my brain and always being asked of me. And so, and that's testing. And people seem to be very afraid of that word, but I'm kind of curious. You're much younger than me, and so I'm very curious as to, you experienced testing in the 70s.
Yes, the testing, our testing was similar to your testing. It was an actual test.
Okay.
I mean, on my green belt test, everybody passed.
Okay.
Brown belt, let's say that we were brown belt, we had maybe 5 guys, 2 passed.
Okay.
Showdown, only I passed out of the 5 or 6.
Okay.
And those other guys tested 1 year, 2 years, sometimes 3 years later. It was a real test. And it was stress, right? It's putting you under stress and seeing what you did.
Now this was Ishinru.
That was Ishinru.
And what year? Well, I don't want to take you back to white belt.
You're talking 69 through, I tested for Shodan in 71 or 72, somewhere in there. I don't know.
Okay, I'm not gonna.
But somewhere in there. So early 70s.
You're well
right?
past 50 years now of training.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So how many?
Yeah.
I know it's. I don't want to. 1972, I was born, so I don't want to. So you tested for Shodan in 72. So how many tests do you think you've taken, board exams or otherwise?
About 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Formal,
we just took 'em
stressful tests.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, how long were those tests?
First 2 were, you were on the floor for a couple hours. I mean, there was 4 or 5 guys. So your part was similar to a core competency. You probably had a half hour where you were getting tested.
Sure.
You stand up, you sit down, right? So you ran similar to core competence. They ran a few hours, and each guy probably did his forms, did some defense, did whatever, right? Whatever the test was at that level. And you had to pass, each section.
Right. So you feel like those tests, even at that time, that you had a curriculum that had to be followed, a standard that had to be met.
Absolutely. It was
That's
not
very
a
different than
ceremony.
what
It
I
was
had.
not- Yeah, well, we went on boards. We were asked to be on boards because at some point we didn't have a school. My guy retired, and we taught in other schools.
Right.
And they would ask us to sit on the board, and we would get together with them before it started and says, is this a test or is this a ceremony?
Right.
Right? Are you really testing these guys? Do you want us to grade and give you what we think?
Right.
Or is this a ceremony? You've already decided they're whatever belt they are. And it was usually, it usually was not a test.
It wasn't a test.
Yeah.
See, my school felt like it was a hazing, but it wasn't exactly negative. So that word doesn't really fit, but I think it's in the idea of, we had tests that were scheduled literally every month, and you had certain time limits between your belts, but ultimately what it meant was we were going to put these guys through the ringer for the night, and at the end of it, everybody passes. And what we got from the top was, you make sure everybody's ready, but there really wasn't a standard. You had a room full of people kicking out kata, and they're all sitting up there. All right, good job. After you're done, you want to puke because you put so much into it, but you really weren't being graded. You were being pushed, to sweat, and then and then promoted
Yeah.
at a
Yeah.
great
It was
deal of
closer to
cost.
Yeah, it was closer to confirmation or bar mitzvah.
Yeah,
You were going
yeah,
through the ceremony, in this
right.
case, hazing,
You're right.
and everybody was going, "Oh, good job." Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Right.
think that's pretty standard.
Well,
Uh,
I mean, when I got to work with Tom for the first time, one of the things I said to him was just outwardly right to him. I thought maybe I'd get knocked down for this, but I'm going to be the next generation of grandmaster. What do you want to do with me? And I think that kind of surprised him because, most people that, really are going to get to the top, that they're going to really find themselves in those places, have to put in decades. And here I am, a young guy, just opened a dojo at third degree saying it. And I'm sure that he was like, we'll
yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah.
And,
Well, that's standard. In our system, and I think you'll see this pretty commonly. There's years between dawns,
absolutely.
right? Between first and second, at least two. Between second and third, three.
Right.
Whatever the dawn was,
Right.
years from your last test, and that was a major criteria. Not your ability, not the criteria you were looking at. It
Mhm.
was time. It was mostly time. In fact, you in LA asked me with their dawns just from time, right? Because my guy retired, and we didn't start training again until like 2004. So he had a gap of like 10 years. I didn't even see him. And all these other guys that were in LA were just, they were all seventh, eighth, and ninth dawns with no improvement. They were doing the same thing they had done at Showdown. So
Well,
there was no curriculum.
I think this is where, the first year for me that I was tested by the KJK, the board was created, and nobody really knew what this was going to be. Everybody, had spent a lot of time training and we're obviously great martial artists, but the idea of what is board testing came up for my test. And I remember that myself and another guy that'd been around with Master Tom for quite a while had gone up there as well. And we took the test, and this is one of the issues that I have to deal with here. I'm not even going to edit it out. I'm just going to, everybody loves a dog. They're running. So we're going to let that go. But, I took this test, and, and I went into that test, wanting initially rank, like, no, I want that. I want that. I see those things on that belt. I want that. And I can say honestly that was the first thing that I was after. But, after time, you start to figure out, or really what a test is it's a time of discovery for myself. I'm trying to push myself. I'm evaluating, I'm looking. And so, I was getting educated. But then I turn around and we go through the years of, board after board after board. Once a year, we're getting groups of, 6 to 10 people. And what it ends up being is education for everybody 100% of the time. It's not really a test. By the time that I go through grade sheets and I make sure that everybody's understanding, I'm teaching grading to the board. The board is trying to be up to speed with the grandmasters and the seniors, and we're all trying to evaluate the same thing properly with some amount of integrity, right? And so it's the whole process across the board is about everybody's level going up. And this is why this process to me is really cool. And that means it has to be a real test too, that if we got a group of people that are agreeing that that's not the case, that you didn't pass, that it's acceptable. It's not for money. It's not for, we want to make more off this person because they're coming back again to test. And we're not trying to hold anybody back either, because we all truly want to see them grow. But at the end of the day, the education all around helps it so that even the people testing are going, nope, I shouldn't have passed.
There you go. That's what I noticed about your organization, our organization.
Yep, ours.
Because we had no intention of joining your organization. We knew Tom was a good teacher, right?
Right.
And he knew what he was. We read the books, we saw the videos, we says, we got to go train with this guy, right? Let's
That's
go
what I
train, we'll
said.
come back, work on it. Yeah, we'll
I
work
was
on,
just looking for a
get,
teacher. No organization was on
there
my
you go.
agenda, just a teacher.
There you go. And what we saw was everybody was looking to get better. They weren't looking to earn a belt. They were not looking for promotion. They were looking to go deeper into what they knew, right? So that
Right.
it was more automatic. Every time you stepped out there, every time you did something, you were exhibiting all the principles that you knew.
Right. Right.
And
Well, it's nice that each
that's
time we
what
go on the
changed
floor, we're reinforcing those things with each other, and
There you
now
go.
we all seem to, focus right on body mechanics immediately. Let's get that better
Absolutely.
first. And
And they're
it's now
huge.
training how we practice and how that process goes. So when you took the test, and you took it once or twice.
Once.
Once, okay. Because some
Yeah.
people, it's a couple times, and so I know that the first time going up there, it's a little scary. But I mean, compared to what you've tested in the past, I mean, the process, of going up there and going through the key hone and the kata, the breakdown, um, is it? Do you think it's one of the more thorough tests and a good objective analysis of where you're at?
That's it, that last sentence, a good objective analysis. You know during the test how you're doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's the part that's hard to swallow sometimes, is like, you don't even need to wait to see if you pass. You already know.
There you go. You know what the criteria is.
Yeah.
You know what it looks like. You know what it feels like. And if you're doing that, most people have a sense of where they're at.
Yeah. Well, we ran blue belt testing, some yellow belts, some orange belts, last week. And these are kids that are anywhere between 5 and 14. Because that's all inclusive in there. As you get older, you're going to help the younger kids, and then you end up in the teens class, the adults are helping you. This process continues. And so, I don't divide up the young kids with the older kids, but we set the standard for months prior coming into a test. And then the day of the test, we talk about, there's no crying, there's no being upset, because it's just more work. And so we've already got that in with these kids, that, look, if I didn't get it this time, I'll come back next week. No problem. Not upset, out, stomped that they didn't get what they wanted. And we failed. I guess half of the class failed. They just didn't meet the standard that they were capable of. Now, they came back yesterday really happy to be there. And all of them said, I did a lot of work. Verified with the parents. They did the work. They practiced. Mom and dad recorded stuff, and they came back. Not only, I mean, one of the things was just confidence, chest up, head up, doing their kata, doing their movements with some amount of authority. And they knew when I asked them at the end, you knew last week that you failed. Yeah, I wasn't ready. How about today? Yeah, I was ready. And it makes a difference. That's the kind of lesson we need to have. It's not about whether or not I should promote somebody to make them happy. It's about how they feel when they're done with the test. Did you learn something?
That's what I get from just about everybody I've trained with KJK.
Yeah.
It isn't everywhere with everybody we've trained with, because we've trained with a lot of different people at some of these seminars.
Yeah.
But the KJK folks all are looking to get better, to learn more, to go deeper into the things they already know. And that comes from you, that comes from Tom, that comes from all the any senior teacher is looking at personal growth as opposed to promotion and that kind of recognition.
Right. Right. Yeah,
So
I don't
you
care to
you
be
you set up
promoted
a
just because I paid for it, showed up, or hung around long enough. These kind of things I think have to have some objective integrity in there. And I like being part of that process. And for me, that means accepting either outcome. And even right now, I'd be happy to fail, if I can go back up there and learn something if I wasn't meeting a standard. Because to go back and actually take a couple weeks to focus on something's not a bad thing. But the goal is, if we train people right, if we're at, what I've noticed over the years is that we're failing people less and less and less. And the reason is because as the board members have become more and more educated and more savvy with the understanding of the grade sheets and stuff, that they're teaching those skills that we are grading people much sooner. And so it's kind of an interesting thing, the willingness to fail somebody, has to be there first, because I know we all want our students to succeed. That's the first thing. That's why I've always had outside black belts on my test, because I'm invested. I want them to do well. But I don't want that to be one of the reasons they pass. But it's noticeable within the group. 20 years now, I've been on this board as somebody being tested on it, as a board member, as a board senior, as a board instructor. And I keep watching that the people that are underneath myself, my own students, other people's students, they're just showing up much, much sooner with the right information, because we're better at it. We understand it better, and we can talk about it with, I think, a lot more ease than we could 20 years ago.
Well,
And for me,
that
that
goes
meant the
back
board had
to
learned, right?
the board. Absolutely. The board kept training, the board, people on the board kept training, kept improving themselves.
Right.
They didn't just sit on their laurels and go, okay, I'm 6 dawn, that's cool.
Right.
They kept, most of those people are passionate.
Yeah. Yeah.
At some level about their martial art, and it is intriguing to them, and they want to know more.
Yeah.
It's fun, right?
Right.
You enjoy getting another aspect of a principle you already know, or seeing another way that it works, right? And those people are on the board, and those are the people teaching, and the whole art has gotten better, right? I mean, when George started out, he had some basic principles and they were exploring.
Yeah.
Right. Same with Tom. They were going back and forth. Does this work? How does this work? How do we even describe what we're doing here? Right. And how do we lay out what the principles are of the things that we're doing?
Right.
Right. And over time it got clearer, and they were able to describe it better and lay it out and teach it. Because we've been training with you guys for 10 years.
Yeah.
And every time we go back, it's slightly different.
Yeah.
Right. Whoever we're training with, they're continually working it themselves, and they're going, well, yeah, we did the form this way a couple of years ago, but look at this, right?
Right. Well,
or you
and
just
that's
watch them, and they're doing it different.
the permissions, usually, you get stuck under that. I have to do it this way because I'm under this person, and I realize in many industries that may be true. For example, working for Apple, you're not going to be going back and forth with a Windows product. And I appreciate the fact that, you're one or the other, but that's not how musicians learn. That's not how artists learn. Martial artists have to learn from multiple points of view, and working with each other to explore these things and to keep learning. One of the things is finding the commonality between all the systems, which I think we've identified after these 20 years on that board. Body mechanics, good body position, the stuff that is really basic that should be applied to all systems. And I think if we got all the grandmasters together to look at what we've laid out for body management, there's not one of them would disagree with this, all the way from BJJ up to Wing Chun or otherwise. So I think it's a great system in a way to learn. I almost to the point where I'm more excited about not getting somebody to pass the third dan test, but getting them to be able to participate in the board, because it seems like that's the way. The path is first is to be able to do the things that are on the board test. The next thing is to be able to identify it in other people. And then by the time you're at fourth dan, you're able to help other people to learn from that. That process in itself is what, 5, 10 years, sometimes longer.
Absolutely.
And the amount of growth that happens within that amount of time in that process is huge. So it's hard for me to put the word testing onto it, because to me it's
I like what you guys have been doing lately. It's calling them evaluations.
right.
Even though it is a test, evaluation kind of says, let's look at where you are now.
Yeah.
It kind of has that ring to it.
Yeah.
And it isn't as, I'll use the word threatening, or, oh, it's either this or this, right? It's pass or fail. No, evaluation is, let's take a look at where you are right now and see what you need to be working on in the future. That's when you say evaluation or competency evaluation. You even called it, when we went in front of you and Sensei Countryman for Tai Chi Chuan, you just called it an evaluation.
Right.
All right. You've been training X amount of years. Let's see what you look like.
Well, and what's interesting then is when we watched you, we evaluated and tried to give as much feedback as we can. But then on top of it, the hours of conversations that came out of that between myself, Master Doherty, yourself, Mitch, that what it ends up doing is it just kept spiraling discussion and learning, for days past that.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
not to mention the reevaluation of the video and the other stuff that we had, and available to us. And so how much of that I realized we all the test is the pressure we put on ourselves and how important it is for us to go up and be successful. And usually the more important it is to us, the more of a test it is. But I think the goal of a martial artist is to get rid of the fear and the anxiety of something that's going to be outside of your abilities or out of your wheelhouse, and be able to handle it with a calm. And I think that's the part of the testing. I like the fact that I can now walk up and smile and not worry about the fact that I'm being tested. To me, then it's just fun. I in my head now, it's not a test I'd walk up to. It's a demonstration of my skill today. And I'm going to enjoy demonstrating it for you. If anything happens from that, then that's a bonus, but not the goal.
I've heard that also from other members of the board.
Yeah.
Express that thing. It's not really a test. You're just demonstrating where you are right now.
Yeah.
This is where I am. Take, whatever you think of it, fine. And whatever your feedback is, I'm welcome to hear it.
Right. Well, that's super cool. All right, man. Well, I'm glad to talk about this, because, this is something that, I've spent, I can honestly say, hundreds and hundreds of hours working with people on to get them not only to understand grade sheets, to be able to pass the test, everything. And it's changed my ability to teach. This process in itself to me was the biggest teacher of all the activities that I can say within the martial arts that I've done. I'm going to say that the testing and going through the process of the board, that process, I think, taught me the most.
Well, it's very comprehensive what you have as the criteria.
Right.
And if you give that criteria to a beginner, they get it. I need to be this way in my stance. I need to be this way with my upper body, right? It's about not particularly how does this look, but how does this feel? How am I doing this movement?
Well, we had kids, at the test yesterday, that's the first thing I say. I'm not ready to start. There's something still wrong. And the first thing they'll fix is their feet, and they're 5 and 6. And it's funny to watch, because, the next thing that's always there is bent knees. And so all I have to do now to my class is literally wink and look down and everybody's feet goes bonk, and then their knees drop. And I was taught many, many years ago that that age group, you do martial arts activities, meaning you play, balance, little games, try to make them happy, hopefully sign them up. I teach them right from the start what's on that grade sheet, and why not? Because
There
they
you
can
go.
absorb it and they can do it. Um, and it's still games,
Yeah.
it's still fun. It has, it just has a standard. And if I can get a 5-year-old to follow that standard and smile and enjoy it, the same as them doing a balance exercise in a class where they're just getting some stripes on their belts, um, that's what I'm going to do. Because someday those kids are going to test. And what was this year, my senior student, in the kids class is now 17. And to just pass third dan, I mean, that would have been unheard of 5 years ago, but she had it. She had the system. She applied the body management. She understood everything on those grade sheets, and she passed everything on those grade sheets,
And she
and
could
so,
do it.
she can do it. Now add to that the sheer number of hours she spent at the dojo, and the standard was there. I myself have a hard time thinking about black belt kids, but if the process is right, then the rank is right. If it's when they get rewarded for showing up and just there's no standard that it becomes maybe a inappropriate thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. I'm with you there. That's why we enjoy coming back all the time. There are standards.
Their standards, yeah.
Yeah, and they're based on they're based on function.
Yes.
The standards
Yes.
are not just to look good. Everything works really well if you're paying attention to all that criteria.
Yeah. And we've had to accept throughout the group and all the seniors now that we're missing some of those or we're not as good at some of those. And so it's a constant checklist for us to improve. Whereas when you don't know, you don't have an idea of what are we looking for in this? How can I keep a standard that, isn't very clear? Um, I think the years of medical practitioners and chiropractors, doctors, acupuncturists, and all the other people we've had exposure to over the years that continue to give feedback and train with us, that I feel really good that what we're doing is going to add to the longevity of life, and that the wellness in the art is the structure, the breath, everything that we're doing. And so I'm at a point here with this that I so much embrace body structure now and what's on those sheets. I can't undo it, even to the point when I'm sitting in a chair. I find it uncomfortable. I want to slouch because I'm tired. And I'm like, nope, nope, Tai Chi posture. So,
It
um,
works. Well, thank you for inviting me today.
yes, thank you for coming on here.
Pleasure hanging with you.
Um,
And